The third hostile dropped before anyone heard the shot. Chief Petty Officer Trace Holloway pressed his back against the crumbling wall and scanned the ridgeline through his scope, searching for the muzzle flash that never came. 2 minutes ago, his team had walked into an ambush that should have killed them all. Now, enemy fighters were dying from angles that made no sense, and not a single one of his SEALs had pulled a trigger. "Who the hell is shooting?" Reese hissed from behind the burned-out vehicle. Holloway had no answer. His 7-man team was pinned in a valley that intelligence had promised would be empty. Instead, they had found 30 armed fighters waiting in prepared positions. Someone had leaked their insertion point. Someone had set them up to die. And now someone else was systematically eliminating the threat from a position Holloway could not identify. Another crack echoed across the rocks. A fighter on the eastern rooftop crumpled and fell 3 stories to the dirt below. The shot had come from the south, maybe, or the west. The acoustic signature bounced off the valley walls until direction became meaningless. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Have you ever witnessed someone whose skills seemed almost supernatural, someone who changed everything just by being present? Senior Chief Wade Okonkwo low-crawled to Holloway's position, his weathered face tight with confusion. "That is 4 confirmed kills in 90 seconds, Commander. Whoever is shooting, they are not missing." Holloway understood what Okonkwo was not saying. These were not lucky shots from a panicked ally. This was precision work. Surgical. The kind of shooting that took years to master and a particular coldness to execute. Someone was out there hunting, and they were terrifyingly good at it. "Get eyes on that southern ridge," Holloway ordered. "I want to know who our guardian angel is." But even as he said it, he knew they would find nothing. The shooter was not on the southern ridge. They were not on any ridge his team could see. They were somewhere impossible, somewhere that defied the geometry of the valley, and they were saving his men 1 bullet at a time. Damon Reese, the youngest operator on the team, sprinted between cover points as another hostile fell. The enemy fighters were panicking now, abandoning their ambush positions to seek shelter from the invisible death raining down on them. Reese slid into position beside Holloway, his breathing ragged. "Commander, I counted 6 tangos down. None of us fired. What is happening?" Holloway watched another fighter drop mid-stride, dead before he hit the ground. 7. That was 7 confirmed kills from a shooter who did not exist, firing from a position that could not be real, with accuracy that bordered on inhuman. "We are leaving," Holloway decided. "Whatever this is, we figure out at base. Move to extraction point Alpha." Now, the team moved. They flowed through the chaos like water through cracks, using the confusion of the dying ambush as cover. Behind them, enemy fighters continued to fall. 8, 9, 10. Each shot bought the SEALs another second, another meter, another breath of survival they had not earned. By the time they reached the extraction point, the gunfire had stopped. The valley had gone silent. Holloway counted his men twice, unable to believe they had all survived an ambush that should have been a massacre. The helicopter lifted them out of the valley as darkness crept across the mountains. Holloway stared out at the terrain below, searching for any sign of their mysterious benefactor. He saw nothing but rocks and shadows and the distant glint of a river winding through the valley floor. Okonkwo leaned close, his voice barely audible over the rotors. 17 confirmed enemy Kia. All precision rifle shots. "Whoever saved us, they're still down there." Holloway did not respond. He was too busy calculating angles, distances, and possibilities. None of them added up. None of them explained how a single shooter had turned an ambush into a slaughter without ever being seen. Back at base, the debrief was chaos. Officers demanded explanations that Holloway could not provide. He told them what he knew, which was almost nothing. An unknown shooter. Impossible accuracy. Perfect timing. His team alive when they should be dead. The intelligence officer exchanged a look with the base commander that Holloway did not miss. They knew something. They were not sharing. "Commander Holloway," the base commander said slowly, "your team encountered a parallel asset operating in your area of operations. That is all I can tell you. Parallel asset. Holloway tasted the words like poison. Someone was running operations in his territory without his knowledge, without coordination, without basic professional courtesy. Someone had watched his team walk into an ambush and had chosen to intervene only after the trap was sprung. Who? Holloway demanded. The base commander's expression did not change. You have a guardian angel, Commander. I suggest you do not interfere with her. Her. The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Holloway felt his jaw tighten. Somewhere in that valley, a woman with a rifle had saved his entire team, and command was telling him to pretend she did not exist. He walked out of the briefing room with more questions than answers and a burning certainty that this was far from over. The river moved like black glass beneath the moonlight, cold enough to kill and quiet enough to hide secrets. Kira Vance had been submerged to her shoulders for 3 hours, her rifle resting on a sandbar she had scouted 2 weeks earlier. The ghillie knitting draped over her head blended perfectly with the reeds along the bank. She was invisible. She was patient. She was exactly where she needed to be. 17 confirmed kills. She had counted each one as the seals extracted, matching faces to the intelligence photos she had memorized months ago. 17 men who would never hurt anyone again. 17 steps closer to the one face that haunted her dreams. Malachizedek, the name carved through her thoughts like a blade. 2 years she had hunted him. 2 years since he had executed her brother on video and broadcast it to the world. 2 years of training, planning, and waiting for the moment when she would finally end him. She touched the dog tags hanging beneath her wetsuit. Staff Sergeant Evan Vance. Her little brother. The one she had promised to protect when their parents died. The one she had failed. The river current tugged at her legs as she shifted position. Somewhere on a mountain above, the SEAL team was flying back to base, confused and angry about the ghost who had saved them. She understood their frustration. Operators like them trained their entire careers to be the best, and tonight someone had outperformed them from the shadows. Their pride was wounded. That was fine. Pride healed. Bullet wounds did not. Her earpiece crackled with encrypted static. Asset whisper, this is Overwatch. Confirm extraction status. Kira keyed her mic twice. 2 clicks. Still in position. Still hunting. Lieutenant Commander Elise Navarro's voice came back tight with concern. Local chatter indicates enemy forces are sweeping the valley. Recommend immediate extraction to secondary position. Kira did not respond. She had heard the enemy patrols moving through the village an hour ago. She had watched them search buildings and question terrified civilians. They knew someone was out there. They just had no idea where to look. The river was her secret. Most snipers sought high ground, elevation, commanding views. Kira had learned a different lesson in the mountains of her childhood. Water masked heat signatures. Water carried sound away. Water was the last place anyone expected death to come from. A flicker of movement on the far bank caught her attention. She adjusted her scope with millimeter precision, her breathing automatically slowing to the rhythm she had practiced 10,000 times. 2 fighters emerged from the tree line, rifles sweeping the darkness. They were searching for her. They were looking in all the wrong places. She could kill them both in under 2 seconds. The thought was automatic, clinical, detached from emotion. But unnecessary kills meant unnecessary noise, and noise meant compromising her position before she reached her real target. She let them pass. An hour later, the sky began to lighten. Kira slipped beneath the surface and swam upstream, using the current to mask any disturbance. She emerged in a culvert 300 meters from her original position, water streaming from her gear as she pulled herself into the concrete tunnel. The secondary hide site was exactly as she had prepared it. Camouflage netting, emergency rations, a backup rifle wrapped in waterproof fabric. She had spent 2 weeks preparing this valley for war, planting caches and mapping escape routes, and memorizing every shadow where death could hide. She stripped off her wetsuit and changed into dry clothes, her movements efficient despite the exhaustion pulling at her muscles. Sleep was a luxury she had abandoned long ago. Every hour she rested was an hour risker could use to escape. Her tablet flickered to life, displaying the intercepted communications her handler had forwarded. The SEAL team was demanding answers. Their commander, someone named Holloway, was threatening to sweep the valley himself if command did not explain who was operating in his territory. Kira almost smiled. Holloway. She had read his file before inserting. Decorated operator. Excellent tactical mind. Absolutely terrible at accepting help he had not requested. He would be a problem if their paths crossed again. And they would cross again. The intelligence was clear. Usker was using this valley as a transit point, moving weapons and fighters through the mountain passes. The SEALs had been sent to gather evidence. She had been sent to end the operation permanently. Different missions. Same target. Inevitable collision. She pulled up the surveillance footage from her hidden cameras, scrubbing through hours of recordings until she found what she was looking for. A convoy had passed through the village at dawn, 3 vehicles moving fast toward the eastern compound. And in the second vehicle, visible for just a moment through the window, a face she would never forget. Usker. He was here. He was close. Kira enlarged the image until the pixels began to blur. The man who had killed her brother was less than 5 kilometers away, hiding behind walls and guards and the arrogance of someone who believed himself untouchable. Her finger traced the outline of his face on the screen. 2 years of hunting. 2 years of sacrifice. 2 years of becoming something harder and colder than she had ever imagined. Soon, she whispered to the image. Soon you will learn what it means to be hunted. She powered down the tablet and began preparing her gear for the night ahead. Somewhere on that mountain, a SEAL commander was plotting his next move. Somewhere in that compound, a monster was planning his escape. And somewhere between them, hidden in shadows and water and patience, an Avenger was rising. Holloway had not slept. He stood in the Tactical Operations Center as dawn broke over the mountains, staring at the map of the valley where his team had nearly died. Red pins marked enemy positions. Blue pins marked their insertion and extraction points. And somewhere in all that empty space between, a ghost with a rifle was operating without his knowledge or consent. 17 kills, Okonkwo said from behind him. I pulled the after-action imagery. Every single shot was a headshot or center mass. No misses, no wounded, just dead. Holloway absorbed this information without turning around. He had been running the numbers all night, trying to calculate how one shooter could cover that much terrain with that much accuracy. The mathematics did not work. The angles did not align. Either their guardian angel had been moving positions faster than humanly possible, or she had found a firing solution that he could not comprehend. What do we know about parallel assets in theater? He asked. Okonkwo moved to stand beside him. Not much. Command runs Black Ops through channels we do not see. Could be CIA. Could be JSOC. Could be something else entirely. Something else. Holloway hated those words. He had spent 15 years building a career on precision and control, on knowing every variable before entering a hostile environment. The idea that someone was running operations in his area without coordination violated everything he believed about professional warfare. The door opened and Damon Reese entered, tablet in hand. His young face carried the same exhaustion they all felt, but something else flickered behind his eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or admiration. Commander, I found something. Reese handed over the tablet. Thermal imaging from the drone we had overhead during extraction. Most of the valley shows normal heat signatures. But here, along the river, there is nothing. Holloway studied the image. The river appeared as a dark ribbon cutting through the thermal landscape, its cold water masking everything beneath and around it. She was in the water, he realized. That is why we could not find her. Reese nodded. Has to be. It is the only explanation for the firing angles. She was shooting from the river basin, using the water to hide her signature and the valley walls to mask her sound. Holloway felt a grudging respect stir beneath his irritation. Whoever this woman was, she understood fieldcraft at a level that impressed even him. River-based sniper positions required extraordinary discipline. The cold alone would degrade most shooters within an hour. She had maintained perfect accuracy while hypothermia crept through her muscles. "I want to find her," Holloway said. Okonkwo and Reese exchanged glances. "Commander," orders were clear. "We are not supposed to interfere." "I'm not going to interfere. I'm going to make contact. If she is operating in our AO, we need coordination. Otherwise, we're going to end up shooting each other instead of the enemy." He did not wait for their objections. Within the hour, he had assembled a foreman reconnaissance element and headed back into the valley. If the ghost wanted to stay hidden, she would stay hidden. But if she was the professional he suspected, she would understand the value of communication. They inserted at dusk, moving through terrain that still smelled like cordite and death. The bodies had been collected by enemy forces, but bloodstains marked the rocks where fighters had fallen. Holloway counted them as he passed. 17 dark patches. 17 perfect shots. The river appeared through the trees as night settled over the valley. Holloway signaled his team to hold position while he moved forward alone. This was a risk. He knew it, but sometimes risk was the only path to understanding. He knelt at the water's edge and pulled out a small infrared beacon. If the ghost was watching, and he suspected she was always watching, she would see this. A standard friendly identification signal. An invitation to talk. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. The river flowed past, indifferent to the human drama unfolding on its banks. Holloway began to wonder if he had miscalculated, if the ghost had already relocated to another position. Then a voice came from somewhere he could not identify. Soft. Controlled. Female. "You should not be here, Commander." Holloway forced himself to remain still. His training screamed at him to find the source, to locate the threat. But this was not a threat. This was something else entirely. "You saved my team," he said to the darkness. "I came to say thank you." A pause. When the voice returned, it carried something that might have been surprise. "Thank you is not why you came. You came because you cannot stand not knowing." Holloway almost smiled. She was right. She was absolutely right. "Were you hunting?" he asked. Silence stretched between them. The river kept flowing. Somewhere in the mountains, an owl called out to the night. "The same thing you are," the voice finally answered. "I am just willing to go further to find it." Before Holloway could respond, movement erupted on the ridge above. Muzzle flashes. Shouting. His team had been spotted by an enemy patrol. He spun toward the threat, rifle rising, but the ghost was already moving. 2 shots cracked through the night. 2 bodies tumbled down the hillside. A third fighter emerged from cover, weapon aimed directly at Holloway, and dropped with a hole in his forehead before he could pull the trigger. "Go," the voice commanded. "Now, before more come." Holloway ran. He collected his team and extracted through the secondary route, enemy fighters pursuing them through the darkness. Behind them, more shots echoed across the valley. More bodies fell. The ghost was covering their retreat, buying them time with blood. By the time they reached safety, 7 more enemy fighters had died, and the ghost had vanished back into the river, into the shadows, into the legend she was building one bullet at a time. Kira watched the seals extract from her position in the reeds, her rifle still warm from the shots that had saved them. 7 more dead, 7 more steps closer to Isker. But now she had a complication she had not anticipated. Holloway had come looking for her. He had found her, or close enough. And he had asked the one question she could not afford to answer honestly. "What are you hunting?" She slipped beneath the surface and let the current carry her downstream, away from the firefight, away from the man who threatened to unravel 2 years of careful planning. The SEALs were supposed to be a temporary nuisance, a parallel operation that would conclude before her real mission began. Instead, their commander was actively seeking contact, trying to coordinate, try to understand. Understanding was dangerous. Understanding led to questions. Questions led to oversight. And oversight would pull her off target before she could finish what she had started. She emerged in her secondary hide site as the first hint of dawn touched the mountains. Her muscles screamed from hours in cold water. Her hands trembled slightly as she stripped her weapon and began the cleaning ritual that kept her skills sharp. These were the moments when exhaustion whispered seductive lies. Rest. Recover. There will be other chances. But there would not be other chances. Oscar was here now. He would not stay forever. Every day she waited was a day he might disappear into another country, another identity, another decade of freedom while her brother rotted in an unmarked grave. Her tablet buzzed with an incoming transmission. She activated the encryption and Lieutenant Commander Navarro's face appeared on screen, her expression tight with concern. Asset Whisper, we have a problem. The SEAL Team Commander filed a contact report. He knows you're operating in his AO, and he is demanding coordination protocols. Kira felt her jaw tighten. He found me last night. I had to break cover to keep his team alive. Navarro processed this information with visible frustration. Your mission parameters are clear. No contact with conventional forces. No coordination. No exposure. Then tell him to stay out of my valley. It is not your valley, Kira. Navarro's voice softened slightly. I know what this mission means to you. I know what Oscar took from you. But if you compromise operational security, command will pull you out. They will send someone else to finish the job. Someone else. The words burned like acid. Someone who had not spent 2 years learning Oscar's patterns. Someone who had not memorized every face in his organization. Someone who had not earned the right to end him. I will handle it, Kira said. Keep the SEALs busy. Give them another target, another mission, anything to get them out of this valley for 72 hours. Navarro hesitated. I will try. But Kira, if this goes wrong, I cannot protect you. The transmission ended. Kira sat in the darkness of her hide site, listening to the distant sounds of the valley waking up. Somewhere out there, Holloway was planning his next move. Somewhere in that compound, Oscar was breathing air he did not deserve. And somewhere between them, she was running out of time. She spent the day conducting surveillance on the eastern compound. Through her scope, she counted guards and mapped patrol routes and searched for any glimpse of the man she had come to kill. The compound was well defended, built into the mountainside with natural rock formations providing cover from aerial observation. Oscar had chosen his hiding place carefully, but not carefully enough. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the valley, she spotted movement near the main building. A group of men emerged, surrounding a central figure who moved with the confident stride of someone who believed himself untouchable. Oscar. He was inspecting his defenses, checking his perimeter, playing the role of warlord with theatrical precision. Kira's crosshairs settled on his chest. Her finger found the trigger. 1 pound of pressure. That was all it would take. 1 pound of pressure, and 2 years of hunting would end in a single heartbeat. But the compound was over a kilometer away. The shot was possible, barely, but the wind patterns in the valley were unpredictable. If she missed, if she only wounded him, he would vanish into the mountains, and she would never find him again. She needed to be closer. She needed a guaranteed kill. She needed patience. Her finger relaxed. The moment passed. Oscar finished his inspection and disappeared back into the building, unaware of how close he had come to death. That night, Kira repositioned to a new hide site overlooking the valley's main road. If Oscar was going to run, this was the route he would take. She would not let him pass. She was settling into position when movement caught her attention. 4 figures moving through the darkness with military precision. SEALs. They were back in the valley, and they were heading directly toward her position. Holloway had set a trap. He was using his team as bait, drawing her out, forcing her to choose between maintaining cover and protecting men who were walking into danger. Kira coasted silently. She had underestimated him. She would not make that mistake again. She keyed her mic twice, alerting Navarro that she was moving, and began the slow crawl toward a fallback position. The SEALs passed within 50 meters of her original hide site, close enough that she could hear their whispered communications. They were not hunting enemies. They were hunting her. For 3 hours, she played cat and mouse through the valley, always one step ahead, never quite visible, never quite gone. And when dawn finally forced the SEALs to extract, Kira allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. Holloway was good, but she was better. The ambush came at dusk on the 3rd day. Kira had been tracking a supply convoy moving toward Oscar's compound when the first explosion ripped through the valley. She dropped flat against the rocks, scope swinging toward the sound, and felt her blood turn to ice. The SEALs. They had walked into a kill zone. She could see them pinned behind a collapsed wall, enemy fighters pouring fire from 3 directions. This was not a chance encounter. This was a planned annihilation. Someone had fed Isker's men the SEAL team's patrol route and timing. Someone had betrayed them. Holloway was shouting orders she could not hear, his team returning fire with desperate precision. But they were outgunned and outpositioned. 2 men were already down, motionless or wounded she could not tell. The rest were burning through ammunition at a rate that would leave them defenseless within minutes. This was not her mission. These were not her men. Every protocol she had trained under screamed at her to maintain position, to let the situation resolve itself, to protect the operation that had consumed 2 years of her life. Then she saw Reese take a round to the shoulder and drop behind cover, his rifle falling from nerveless fingers. The youngest one, the one who had looked at her thermal signature with wonder instead of suspicion. He was going to die in this valley, and she was going to watch it happen. No. Kira broke cover and sprinted toward an elevated position she had scouted days earlier. Her legs burned as she climbed, her lungs screaming for air she could not spare. Below, the firefight intensified. More explosions, more screaming, more death. She reached the outcropping and dropped into a prone shooting position without conscious thought. Her rifle found her shoulder like an extension of her body. Her eye found the scope. Her finger found the trigger. The first hostile died mid-reload, his head snapping back as the round found its mark. The second fell before the first hit the ground. The third turned toward the sound and caught a bullet through his throat. The enemy fighters began to panic. They had planned for a trapped SEAL team, not an angel of death raining fire from above. Kira worked through them with mechanical efficiency, her breathing steady, her hands calm, her mind empty of everything except the next target. 12 kills in 90 seconds. Then 15. Then 18. The survivors broke and ran, abandoning their ambush positions in a desperate scramble for safety. Kira let them go. Her magazine was nearly empty, and the SEALs needed immediate assistance more than she needed additional kills. She descended from the outcropping and moved toward the SEAL position, caution abandoned in favor of speed. Holloway saw her coming and raised his weapon instinctively before recognition flickered across his face. "You," he breathed. Kira ignored him and knelt beside Reese, assessing his wound with practiced efficiency. Through and through. Missed the artery. He would live if they got him to surgical care within the hour. "Medevac," she said. "Now." Holloway stared at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Then he keyed his radio and called for emergency extraction. The helicopter arrived in 17 minutes. Kira helped load the wounded, her hands slick with blood that was not her own. Reese grabbed her wrist as the medics strapped him to the stretcher, his eyes glassy with pain but focused on her face. "Thank you," he managed. She pulled free without responding and stepped back as the helicopter lifted off. The rotor wash scattered dust and debris across the valley floor, erasing the evidence of the slaughter that had unfolded here. Holloway approached her slowly, his weapon lowered but his posture tense. "You exposed yourself. You could have stayed hidden." Kira met his gaze without flinching. "Your team is going to die. We are not your responsibility." "No, you're not." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. The ambush was planned. Someone told them exactly where we would be and when. His words carried the weight of a man confronting an ugly truth. "We have a leak." Kira had already reached the same conclusion. The timing was too precise, the positioning too perfect. Someone with access to SEAL operational plans was feeding information to Isker's network. "Your problem," she said. "Not mine." But even as she spoke, she knew it was a lie. If the leak was connected to Isker, it was absolutely her problem. It meant her target had penetrated deeper into military intelligence than anyone had suspected. It meant he was more dangerous than she had calculated. It meant she was running out of time. She disappeared into the gathering darkness before Holloway could ask more questions, her mind racing through possibilities and implications. The valley had become a chessboard, and someone was playing both sides. Behind her, a voice crackled through the night. A recorded message broadcast from somewhere in the mountains. The audio quality poor, but the words unmistakable. "I know you're out there, little hunter." The voice was calm, almost amused. "I killed your blood. I watched the light leave his eyes. And now I will watch you die the same way." Oscar. He knew she was here. He knew who she was. The hunt had just become personal for both of them. Holloway stood in the Tactical Operations Center, staring at a photograph he had never expected to see. The woman from the valley. The ghost. The sniper who had now saved his team twice and vanished like smoke both times. Chief Petty Officer Kira Vance, the intelligence officer, said. Former Marine scout sniper. Recruited into a joint task force 2 years ago after her brother was executed by Malik Oscar. The room fell silent. Holloway studied the photograph, matching the face to the fleeting glimpse he had caught in the valley. Sharp features, cold eyes, the kind of stillness that came from absolute focus. Her brother was Staff Sergeant Evan Vance, the officer continued, captured during a reconnaissance mission near the Pakistani border. Oscar held him for 3 weeks before broadcasting his execution. Kira requested transfer to a hunter-killer unit the same day. Okonkwo shifted uncomfortably. She has been hunting him for 2 years. Not just hunting. The officer pulled up another file, this one filled with operation reports and kill confirmations. She has dismantled his network piece by piece, eliminated 17 of his top lieutenants, destroyed 4 weapons caches, intercepted 2 major funding transfers. Everything she has done for 24 months has been building toward this valley. Holloway absorbed the information, his perspective shifting with each new detail. He had viewed her as an obstacle, an unknown variable disrupting his operation. Now he understood she was something far more dangerous. She was a weapon pointed at a single target, and nothing would stop her from reaching it. Why were we not briefed? He demanded. Compartmentalization. Her mission operates outside normal channels. Command decided coordination would compromise operational security. Holloway felt anger rise in his chest. Operational security. His men had nearly died because someone decided they did not need to know a vengeful sniper was stalking the same valley. Reese was in surgery right now because compartmentalization mattered more than communication. The leak, he said, forcing his voice to remain level. If Oscar knew our patrol routes, he might know about her too. The officer nodded slowly. That broadcast confirms it. He knows who she is. He knows why she is here. And based on intercepted communications, he is preparing to either run or eliminate her directly. When is he running? Our best estimate is 48 hours. He has a convoy assembling at the eastern compound. Once he crosses into the mountain passes, we lose him. 48 hours. Holloway looked at the photograph again, seeing not an obstacle, but an asset. The most motivated, most skilled, most dangerous asset he had ever encountered. Give me a secure line to her handler, he said. We need to coordinate. The first communication was tense. Lieutenant Commander Navarro was protective of her operative, suspicious of SEAL intentions, and reluctant to share tactical information. But Holloway was persuasive when he needed to be, and the clock was ticking for everyone. By midnight, he had the full picture. Kira's infiltration routes, her hide sites, her supply caches, her contingency plans. 2 years of preparation laid out in meticulous detail, all pointing toward a single objective. She's going to assault that compound alone, Okonkwo observed quietly. Even with everything she has planned, those odds are suicide. Holloway knew he was right. The compound housed at least 40 fighters, plus Oscar's personal security detail. One sniper, no matter how skilled, could not overcome those numbers without support. He keyed the satellite communication system and waited for the encryption to cycle. When Kira's voice came through, it was flat and wary. Commander Holloway, I assume you have read my file by now. I have. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I know what he took from you. I know why you are here. Then you know this is not your fight. Holloway thought about Reese in the surgical bay, about the men who had nearly died in that ambush, about the leak that had betrayed them all. He made it my fight when he tried to kill my team. And whoever is feeding him information is still out there, which means none of us are safe until he is gone. Silence stretched across the connection. When Kira spoke again, her voice carried something it had not before. Uncertainty. What are you proposing? A joint assault. My team handles the perimeter. You handle Isker. We extract together, and command gets their high-value target while you get your closure. Another pause. Longer this time. I do not need closure, Commander. I need him dead. Holloway let the words hang in the air. He understood the distinction. Closure implied healing, moving forward, finding peace. What Kira wanted was simpler and darker. She wanted an ending. Then let me help you end it, he said. 48 hours. After that, he disappears, and you spend another 2 years chasing shadows. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Finally, Kira spoke. There's a river approach to the eastern compound. I have mapped every defensive position between the water and the main building. If your team can draw their attention to the north, I can get inside. Holloway felt something release in his chest. It was not trust, not yet, but it was the beginning of something that might become trust if they both survived long enough. Send me everything, he said. We plan together. We execute together. And when this is over, we walk out of this valley together. The transmission ended. Holloway turned to find Okonkwo watching him with an expression caught between admiration and concern. You just allied us with an Avenger on a suicide mission, the senior chief observed. Holloway nodded slowly. Then we better make sure it is not suicide. The planning session lasted 6 hours. Kira sat in a makeshift command post 3 kilometers from the main base, her face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays as Holloway's voice fed through her earpiece. They mapped approach vectors and fallback positions. They synchronized timing down to the second. They accounted for every variable except the one that mattered most. Trust. You hesitate at the northern breach, you die, Kira said flatly. Your team needs to hit hard and loud. Draw every fighter to that wall. Holloway's response carried a thin edge of irritation. I know how to run a diversionary assault. Do you? Because the last time her team entered this valley, someone nearly got you all killed. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken accusations. Kira knew she had pushed too hard, but she could not afford to soften the truth. In 36 hours, she would be swimming through frozen water toward the most dangerous man she had ever hunted. If Holloway's team failed to hold their end, she would die alone in that compound. The leak, Holloway finally said. We still do not know where it came from. No, we do not. If it is someone on my team, this whole operation is compromised before it starts. Kira had considered this possibility. She had run through every scenario, every permutation of betrayal that might explain how Usker had known the SEAL patrol routes. But the mathematics did not support an internal traitor. The leak had to come from higher up the chain, someone with access to multiple operational plans. It is not your team, she said. The information Usker received covered too many separate operations. Your men do not have that kind of access. Then who? Someone at command level. Someone who sees the full picture. Holloway processed this in silence. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its edge. If you are right, then command might already know about our joint assault. Yes, and you still want to proceed. Kira touched the dog tags beneath her shirt, feeling the cold metal against her skin. Evan had worn these tags on the day he was captured. She had recovered them from the site of his execution, pried them from the blood-soaked ground where her brother had spent his final moments. I have waited 2 years, she said. I am not waiting anymore. The next morning, Kira relocated to her final staging position along the river. The water was colder than she remembered, fed by mountain snowmelt that turned her muscles to stone within minutes of submersion. She forced herself to breathe through the pain, to compartmentalize the physical suffering into a distant corner of her mind where it could not affect her performance. Okonkwo's voice crackled through her waterproof earpiece. Asset whisper, this is Trident 2. Radio check. Whisper copies. She kept her voice barely above a breath. conscious of how sound traveled across water. Trident Actual wants to confirm your position. In the river, 200 meters from the southern wall. Ready to move on signal. A pause. Then Holloway's voice replaced Okonkwo's. Kira, before we do this, I need to say something. She waited, her body suspended in the freezing current, her rifle sealed in waterproof wrapping against her chest. I read the full report on your brother. What Isker did to him. The things he said during the broadcast. Holloway's words came slowly, weighted with something that sounded almost like grief. No one should have to watch that. No one should have to carry that. Kira felt something crack inside her chest, a fissure in the armor she had spent 2 years building. She had watched the execution video exactly once. She had memorized every frame, every word, every moment of her brother's suffering. Then she had locked it away in a place so deep that even her nightmares could not reach it. He called out for me, she heard herself say. At the end, he called my name. The words hung in the frozen air, more vulnerable than anything she had allowed herself to speak in years. Then we make sure he did not call in vain, Holloway said quietly. 30 minutes to assault. Get in position. The connection fell silent. Kira allowed herself 3 seconds of stillness, 3 seconds to remember Evan's face before the hood went over his head, 3 seconds to feel the full weight of what she was about to do. Then she began to move. The river carried her closer to the compound with each passing minute. She navigated by memory and moonlight, avoiding the security cameras she had mapped weeks earlier, slipping past patrol boats that never thought to look beneath the surface. The southern wall loomed above her, ancient stone and modern reinforcement blending into an imposing barrier. Somewhere beyond that wall, Isker was sleeping in a bed he did not deserve, dreaming dreams that should have been nightmares. Not for much longer. Kira found the drainage grate she had identified during her reconnaissance, a narrow opening where the compound's waste water emptied into the river. She had spent 3 days measuring that grate, calculating whether her body could fit through the gap. It would be close. It would be painful, but it would get her inside. She checked her weapon one final time, confirmed her ammunition count, and steadied her breathing. Trident Actual, she whispered. Whisper is in position, waiting for your signal. Holloway's response came back immediate and certain. All elements confirm ready. Assault commences in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 300 seconds. The last 300 seconds of the hunt that had consumed her entire existence. Kira closed her eyes and let the cold water embrace her. When she opened them again, she would be a weapon. Nothing more. Nothing less. The countdown began. The explosion lit up the northern wall like a second sunrise. Kira heard the assault begin before she saw it. The thunder of breaching charges followed by the staccato rhythm of automatic weapons fire. Holloway's team had hit the compound exactly on schedule, drawing every defender toward the breach point with overwhelming violence. She moved. The drainage grate resisted her for 3 agonizing seconds before giving way with a groan of rusted metal. She squeezed through the gap, feeling stone scrape against her ribs, her shoulders, her hips. For one terrible moment she was stuck, trapped between the river and the compound with gunfire echoing above her head. Then she was through, gasping in the fetid darkness of the drainage tunnel, her rifle already in her hands. The tunnel opened into a maintenance corridor beneath the compound's main building. Kira navigated by the mental map she had constructed from weeks of surveillance, counting doorways and intersections until she reached the stairwell that would take her to the upper levels. Whisper is inside, she breathed into her mic, moving to primary target location. Holloway's response was fragmented by gunfire. Copy. We are engaged to the northern wall. Heavy resistance. Heavier than expected. Heavier than expected. The words sent ice through her veins. If Isker had reinforced his defenses, it meant he knew they were coming. The leak had struck again. She pushed the thought aside and focused on movement. Up the stairs, through the service door, into the corridor that led to Isker's personal quarters. 2 guards stood outside the door, their attention fixed on the sounds of battle filtering through the walls. They never saw her coming. 2 shots. 2 bodies. She stepped over them without breaking stride. The door was reinforced steel, locked from the inside. Kira placed a breaching charge and stepped back, counting the seconds until detonation. The blast tore the door from its hinges. She was through the smoke before it cleared, rifles sweeping the room, searching for the face that had haunted her dreams for 2 years. Empty. The bed was unmade. Personal effects scattered across the desk. A half-eaten meal on a tray by the window. But no Wesker. Tried an actual. Target is not in primary location. Repeat, target is not here. Holloway cursed across the channel. We have fighters retreating toward the eastern courtyard. He might be trying to reach the vehicle depot. Kira was already moving. She had studied the compound layout exhaustively, knew every corridor and shortcut between the main building and the vehicle depot. If Wesker was running, she would intercept him. She descended through the building like a ghost, neutralizing threats before they registered her presence. 3 fighters in a stairwell. 2 more guarding a doorway. 1 officer shouting into a radio who died with the word still in his throat. The eastern courtyard was chaos. Holloway's assault had drawn most of the defenders north, but a cluster of fighters had formed a protective cordon around 3 armored vehicles. And in the center of that cordon, directing the evacuation with calm authority, stood Malik Wesker. Kira dropped to one knee behind a concrete barrier, her scope finding his face across 50 meters of open ground. He looked older than his photographs, gray threading through his beard, lines carved deep around his eyes. But the cruelty was still there, visible in the set of his jaw, the coldness of his gaze. She had the shot. 50 meters. No wind. Clear sight line. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Then Wesker turned and looked directly at her position, as if he had sensed her presence through the chaos. A smile crossed his face. Not fear, not surprise, satisfaction. He raised his hand and made a gesture she did not understand. The world exploded. The barrier she was using for cover disintegrated in a ball of fire and shrapnel. Kira felt herself lifted off her feet, thrown backward through the air, her rifle spinning away into the darkness. She hit the ground hard enough to drive the breath from her lungs and lay stunned as debris rained down around her. Ambush. He had known exactly where she would be. He had been waiting for her. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard footsteps approaching. Multiple fighters, moving to confirm the kill. She reached for her sidearm, found the holster empty, realized it had been torn away by the blast. This is how it ends, she thought. 2 years of hunting, and I die in the dirt like my brother. Then gunfire erupted from somewhere behind her. The approaching fighters scattered, several dropping as rounds found their marks. A hand grabbed her shoulder and hauled her upright, and she found herself staring into Holloway's blood-streaked face. Not today, he growled. Move. He half-carried her toward the northern wall, his team providing covering fire as enemy fighters regrouped. Kira's legs felt distant, unresponsive, but she forced them to work through sheer will. Behind them, she heard engines roar to life. The armored vehicles were moving. Wesker was escaping. No, she tried to turn back, but Holloway's grip was iron. He is gone, Kira. We need to extract. Now. She watched the vehicles disappear through the compound gate, carrying her target into the mountains, carrying 2 years of sacrifice into the darkness. She had failed. Holloway dragged her toward the extraction point as the compound burned behind them. Somewhere in the distance, helicopter rotors beat against the night sky. But all Kira could hear was Wesker's laughter echoing in her mind. The helicopter touched down at the forward operating base as dawn crept over the mountains. Kira sat motionless in the cargo bay, her eyes fixed on nothing, her mind replaying the moment Wesker had smiled at her across the courtyard. He had known. He had been waiting. The entire assault had been a trap designed to draw her out and eliminate her once and for all. A medic approached with bandages and antiseptic, but Kira waved him away. The cuts and bruises meant nothing. The only wound that mattered was the one she could not see, the one carved deep in her chest where hope used to live. Holloway appeared in the helicopter doorway, his face grim beneath layers of dirt and dry blood. "We need to talk." She did not respond. What was there to say? 2 years of preparation. 2 years of sacrifice. All of it burned away in a single explosion. He climbed in the cargo bay and sat across from her, close enough that she could not avoid his gaze. "The convoy is heading east through the mountain passes. Our drones lost them in the cloud cover, but we have a general direction of travel. It does not matter." Her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "He will disappear. New identity. New location. Another decade before anyone finds him again. Maybe." Holloway leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Or maybe we stop feeling sorry for ourselves and figure out how to catch him before he crosses the border." Something flickered in Kira's chest. Not hope. Not yet. But something adjacent to it. "The border is 200 kilometers away," she said slowly. "Even at maximum speed, those vehicles cannot cover that distance before nightfall." Holloway nodded, which means he has to stop somewhere. Refuel. Rest. Transfer to a different vehicle. She forced her mind to engage, to push past the fog of failure and focus on the tactical reality. Oscar was methodical. He would have planned his escape route as carefully as he had planned her death. But even the best plans had vulnerabilities. "The river," she said suddenly. "What about it?" "It runs east through the mountains, parallel to the road for the first 100 kilometers before splitting north. If he is trying to reach the border crossing at Khyber, he will have to cross the river at one of 3 bridge points." Holloway pulled out his tactical tablet and called up a map of the region. "Show me." Kira traced the route with her finger, her mind accelerating through possibilities. "Here, here, and here. The first bridge is too close to our current position. He would expect pursuit. The third is too far. He cannot reach it before we could establish a blocking position. The second bridge," Holloway concluded. "The second bridge." Kira felt something shift inside her, the pieces of a new plan falling into place. "It is narrow, single lane, surrounded by high ground on both sides. Perfect terrain for an ambush." She met his eyes for the first time since the failed assault. "If we move now, we could be in position before he arrives." Holloway was already keying his radio. "Trident elements, prepare for immediate redeployment. Full combat load. We're going hunting." The team assembled in minutes, driven by a mixture of professional determination and personal vendetta. Oscar had tried to kill them. He had nearly succeeded. Now, they were going to return the favor. Reese appeared at Kira's side as she checked her backup rifle, his wounded arm bound tight against his chest. "I am coming. You are injured. I can still shoot." His young face carried a hardness it had not possessed 3 days earlier. "That bastard almost killed all of us. I want to see him go down." Kira studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say." The helicopter inserted them 2 kilometers from the bridge as afternoon shadows lengthened across the mountains. Kira led the team through terrain she had never seen before but understood instinctively, reading the landscape for cover positions and sight lines. The bridge came into view as the sun touched the western peaks. A narrow stone structure spanning a rushing river, exactly as the maps had indicated. And on the far side, parked in a clearing beside the road, 3 armored vehicles. "He is already here," Okonkwo breathed. "No." Kira studied the vehicles through her scope. "He is waiting, checking for pursuit before crossing." They established positions on the high ground overlooking the bridge, each SEAL finding natural cover among the rocks and scrub brush. Kira settled into a prone position at the center of the line, her rifle trained on the vehicles below. Minutes passed. The sun continued its descent. Then the vehicle doors opened and fighters began to emerge, stretching and checking weapons, preparing for the final leg of their journey. And there, stepping out of the second vehicle, his face illuminated by the dying light, was Malik Asghar. Kira felt her heart stop. 50 meters, maybe 60, an easy shot under normal circumstances. But the angle was wrong, the vehicle door providing partial cover, the other fighters creating a screen of bodies between her and her target. "Wait," Holloway whispered through the comms. Let them move toward the bridge. She forced herself to breathe, to be patient, to trust the man who had pulled her from the fire when everything had gone wrong. The fighters formed a loose column and began walking toward the bridge. Oscar moved near the center, surrounded by bodyguards, his eyes scanning the high ground with the caution of a man who had survived countless attempts on his life. 50 meters from a bridge. 40. 30. Now, Holloway commanded. The SEALs opened fire. Fighters dropped in the first volley, caught in a crossfire they had not anticipated. Oscar's bodyguards threw themselves in front of him, absorbing rounds meant for their master, buying him precious seconds to react. He ran, not toward the vehicles, not toward the bridge, toward the river. Kira rose from her position and sprinted down the slope, abandoning cover, abandoning caution, abandoning everything except the singular need to reach him before he escaped again. Oscar hit the water and began swimming toward the far bank. Kira hit the water 3 seconds later, the cold shocking her system, her rifle held above her head as she fought the current. He was close now, close enough to see the desperation in his movements, the fear finally breaking through his composure. She raised her rifle, water streaming from the barrel, and aimed at the man who had murdered her brother. Oscar turned, treading water, and their eyes met across 10 meters of churning river. Your brother begged, he spat. He wept like a child. Kira rose from the water, her feet finding purchase on the rocky riverbed, her silhouette rising against the moonlight like a specter of vengeance. He called my name, she said, and now you will learn his. The river churned between them, cold and indifferent to the reckoning unfolding in its waters. Kira held her rifle steady, the barrel trained on Oscar's chest, her finger resting against the trigger with 2 years of pressure behind it. One squeeze. That was all it would take. One small movement, and the man who had destroyed her world would cease to exist. Oscar watched her with eyes that held no remorse. You think killing me will bring him back. You think my death will fill the emptiness inside you. Kira said nothing. Words were meaningless now. Everything that mattered existed in the space between her finger and the trigger. I have killed hundreds, Oscar continued, his voice carrying across the water with practiced calm. Your brother was nothing special. Just another American who thought he could change the world with a rifle and good intentions. The words hit her like physical blows, each one designed to provoke, to destabilize, to create an opening he could exploit. She recognized the tactic. He was stalling, hoping his remaining fighters would reach them, hoping the darkness would provide escape. She would not give him the satisfaction. Evan Vance, she said, her voice cutting through the night like a blade. Staff Sergeant, 3rd Ranger Battalion. He was 27 years old. He liked terrible movies and burned every meal he ever cooked. He wrote me letters every week, even when there was nothing to say. Oscar's expression flickered. This was not the response he had expected. He volunteered for the mission that got him captured because he believed in something bigger than himself. Kira took a step forward, the water swirling around her waist. You tortured him for 3 weeks. You broadcast his execution to the world. And in his final moments, he did not beg. He did not weep. She was close enough now to see the uncertainty creeping into Oscar's eyes. He called my name because he knew I would come for you. He knew that no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost, I would find you. And I would make you answer for what you did. Oscar lunged. He moved faster than she had anticipated, his hand closing around the barrel of her rifle, trying to wrench it away. They struggled in the churning water, bodies colliding, the weapon between them becoming a fulcrum of survival. He was stronger than he looked. Decades of warfare had hardened him into something more than human, a creature of pure violence forged in the fires of countless conflicts. Kira felt her grip slipping, felt the rifle twisting in her hands. Then she let go. The sudden release sent Oscar stumbling backward, off balance for a critical half-second. Kira drew her backup knife from her vest and drove it forward, feeling the blade sink into his shoulder. Oscar screamed. The sound echoed across the river, raw and animal and utterly satisfying. She twisted the knife and pulled it free, blood blooming in the water around them. He collapsed against a boulder, one hand pressed to his wound, the other raised in desperate defense. "Wait," he gasped. "I have information. Names. Networks. Everything your intelligence agencies have been trying to find for years." Kira retrieved her rifle from where it had fallen in the shallows. She checked the action, cleared the water from the barrel, and aimed once more at his chest. "I know who leaked your brother's mission." Usker's words tumbled out in a frantic stream. "I know who betrayed your SEAL team. It goes higher than you can imagine. Kill me, and you will never find them." She hesitated, not because she believed him, not because she cared about intelligence or networks or the shadowy figures who had enabled his atrocities. She hesitated because Evan would have hesitated. Her brother had believed in justice, in systems, in the idea that even monsters deserved to face judgment rather than execution. He had died holding on to those beliefs, and killing Isker in cold blood would betray everything Evan had stood for. The conflict must have shown on her face, because Isker's expression shifted from fear to calculating hope. "You cannot do it," he said. "You're not a killer. You're just a grieving sister playing soldier." Kira lowered her rifle. For a moment, triumph flashed in Isker's eyes. He thought he had won. He thought his words had found the weakness he needed. Then she stepped forward and drove the butt of her rifle into his face with every ounce of strength she possessed. He crumpled into the water, unconscious, blood streaming from his shattered nose. "You are right," she said to his motionless form. "Evan would not want me to kill you. He would want you to stand trial. He would want the world to see exactly what you are." She grabbed Isker by his collar and began dragging him toward the riverbank. He was heavier than she expected, dead weight in the rushing current, but she refused to let go. Holloway met her at the water's edge, his team fanning out to secure the perimeter. He looked at the unconscious terrorist, then at Kira, and something like respect settled into his features. "You took him alive. Evan would have wanted it this way." Holloway nodded slowly. He helped her drag Isker onto dry land, where Okonkwo was already preparing restraints. The remaining fighters had been neutralized. The bridge was secure, and somewhere in the mountains behind them, the sun was beginning to rise on a world that no longer contained Malik Isker as a free man. Kira stood over her brother's murderer, watching him breathe, watching him bleed, watching him exist in a state of helpless captivity. It was not the ending she had imagined. It was not the violent closure she had craved for 2 years. But it was justice. And for the first time since Evan's death, that felt like enough. The helicopter extraction was supposed to be routine. Kira sat beside Isker's unconscious form, her hand resting on her rifle, her eyes never leaving his face. Even bound and bleeding, he radiated menace. 20 minutes to the forward operating base. 20 minutes until he would be transferred to intelligence officers who would spend months extracting every secret from his broken mind. 20 minutes that the enemy was not willing to give them. The first RPG streaked past the helicopter's nose, close enough that Kira felt the heat through the open door. The pilot banked hard, throwing everyone sideways, as a second rocket exploded somewhere behind them. "Contact!" Holloway shouted into his headset. "Multiple technicals on the road below. They're tracking us." Kira looked out the door and saw the vehicles, at least 5 of them, racing along the mountain road with mounted weapons spitting fire toward the sky. Usker's remaining loyalists. They had been waiting for exactly this moment. The helicopter shuddered as rounds punched through the fuselage. One of the crew chiefs slumped against the bulkhead, blood spreading across his flight suit. Okonkwo moved to apply pressure while Reese returned fire through the open door. "We cannot outrun them," the pilot called back. "Engine 2 is losing power. I need to set down." "Negative," Holloway responded. "Find us a defensible position." The helicopter lurched toward a rocky outcropping overlooking the road, its rotors screaming in protest as the damaged engine fought to keep them airborne. They hit the ground hard, the impact jarring through Kira's spine, but they were down. They were alive. "For now. Perimeter," Holloway ordered. "They will be on us in minutes." The team moved with desperate efficiency, dragging the wounded crew chief to cover, establishing firing positions among the rocks. preparing for the assault they knew was coming. Kira grabbed Isker's collar and hauled him behind a boulder, unwilling to let him out of her sight even as death closed in around them. The technicals appeared on the road below, disgorging fighters who began advancing up the slope. 30 at least, maybe more, against 7 SEALs, 1 wounded sniper, and an unconscious prisoner. Holloway settled into position beside her. Any chance you have another miracle in that rifle? Kira chambered around and found her first target. I guess we'll find out. The firefight was brutal and close. Fighters fell under precision fire, but more kept coming, their numbers threatening to overwhelm the small defensive position through sheer attrition. Reese took a round to his already wounded arm and kept shooting. Okonkwo burned through 3 magazines, holding the left flank alone. And through it all, Kira worked her rifle like an instrument of divine judgment. Each shot found its mark. Each trigger pull bought them another few seconds of survival. She had spent 2 years becoming the deadliest sniper in theater, and now that skill was the only thing standing between her team and annihilation. 15 kills. 20. 25. Still they came. A fighter breached their perimeter, appearing over the rocks with his weapon raised toward Holloway's back. Kira spun and fired from the hip, a shot she had no right to make, and watched him crumple 3 feet from the commander. Holloway glanced at the body, then at her. That is twice you have saved my life. Stop counting and keep shooting. The ammunition was running low. The fighters had pulled back to regroup, but their next push would likely be the last. Kira looked at the faces around her, these men who had started as obstacles and become something like brothers, and felt a strange peace settle over her. If this was the end, at least she would not face it alone. Then Reese pointed toward the eastern sky. What is that? Kira followed his gaze and saw them. 3 black shapes moving fast across the mountains, rotors catching the morning light. Apache gunships. Someone had heard their distress call. The gunships descended on the remaining fighters like angels of destruction. Rockets and cannon fire tore through the technicals, scattering the assault force into chaos and retreat. Within minutes, it was over. Holloway keyed his radio, his voice hoarse with relief. Trident Actual to Overwatch. Hostile forces neutralized. Request immediate medevac for wounded personnel. The response crackled back, calm and professional. Rohir, Trident Actual. Medevac inbound. Excellent work down there. Kira slumped against the boulder, her rifle suddenly impossibly heavy in her hands. Around her, the SEALs were checking each other's wounds, sharing water, allowing themselves to believe they had actually survived. Holloway approached and lowered himself beside her. When we get back, there's going to be a lot of paperwork. Debriefs. After-action reports. Command is going to want to know everything. I know. He was quiet for a moment, watching the gunships circle overhead. What I put in my report is going to matter. For your career. For how they see what happened here. Kira met his eyes. What are you going to tell them? The truth. He extended his hand toward her. That Chief Petty Officer Kira Vance is the finest operator I have ever worked with, and that my team would not have survived this mission without her. She looked at his hand, calloused and blood-stained, and offered in genuine respect. Then she took it. She is one of us, Holloway said quietly. She always was. Behind them, Isker groaned as consciousness began to return. Kira glanced at him, then back at Holloway, and allowed herself a small smile. Let's get him to interrogation before he bleeds out. I did not drag him out of that river just to watch him die on a mountainside. Holloway laughed, a sound that seemed foreign after so much violence. Copy that. The forward operating base was quiet when the helicopters touched down. Word had spread about what happened in the valley, about the ghost sniper who had risen from the river to capture one of the most wanted terrorists in the region. Soldiers lined the tarmac, watching in silence as Isker was carried off on a stretcher, his wrists bound, his future reduced to a concrete cell and endless interrogation. Kira walked past them without acknowledgement. She had not done this for recognition. She had not done this for medals or commendations or the whispered admiration of strangers. She had done this for Evan. The memorial wall stood at the far end of the base, a simple structure of wooden panels covered with photographs and dog tags and handwritten letters. Kira had avoided it since her arrival, unwilling to face the proof of her failure to protect the one person who had mattered most. Now she walked toward it with steady steps. Evan's photograph was in the center of the third panel, a formal portrait taken during his promotion ceremony, his face young and serious and impossibly alive. Someone had placed fresh flowers beneath it, a small gesture of remembrance from soldiers who had never known him but honored his sacrifice anyway. Kira reached in her pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper. The capture confirmation from Malakasker, signed and stamped and official. She had requested a physical copy specifically for this moment. "I got him," she whispered to the photograph. "It took me 2 years, but I got him." The words felt inadequate. Everything she could say felt inadequate. Evan deserved more than a piece of paper and a whispered promise. He deserved to be alive, to be standing beside her, to be making terrible jokes about how long it had taken her to finish the mission. But this was what she had. This was all she could give him. She pressed the paper against the memorial wall, letting her fingers trace the outline of his face one final time. Then she stepped back and allowed herself to feel the weight of everything she had carried for 2 years. Grief, rage, determination, exhaustion, love. It crashed over her like a wave, stealing her breath, buckling her knees. She caught herself against the wall, tears streaming down her face, her body shaking with sobs she had refused to release since the day she watched her brother die. For long minutes, she wept. She wept for Evan and for herself, and for the woman she had been before this mission consumed her. She wept for the years she had lost, and the relationships she had sacrificed, and the parts of her soul that had been burned away in the pursuit of vengeance. And when the tears finally stopped, she felt something she had not felt in 2 years. Peace. Footsteps approached from behind. She did not need to turn to know who it was. Holloway stopped beside her, his presence solid and undemanding. He looked at Evan's photograph, then at the capture confirmation pressed against the wall. "He would be proud of you," he said quietly. Kira wiped her face with the back of her hand. "He would tell me I took too long." Holloway almost smiled. "Sounds like a good brother. The best." They stood in silence, 2 warriors paying respect to the fallen. The sun climbed higher over the mountains, painting the memorial wall in shades of gold and amber. "Command wants to debrief you," Holloway finally said. "After that, Lieutenant Commander Navarro has orders for your next assignment." Kira nodded slowly. She had expected this. The mission was over, which meant she would be reassigned, sent to another theater, pointed at another target. The machine of war did not pause for grief or healing. "Actually," Holloway continued, "I made a request. Asked if you could be attached to my team on a permanent basis." She turned to look at him, surprise cutting through her exhaustion. "You spent 2 years operating alone," he said. "Might be time to try something different." Kira considered the offer. For 2 years, solitude had been her shield. She had pushed away everyone who tried to get close, convinced that connection would only lead to more loss. But these men had fought beside her. They had bled beside her. They had become something she had never expected to find again. "Family. I will think about it," she said. Holloway nodded, accepting the answer without pushing. "Take your time. We're not going anywhere." He walked away, leaving her alone with her brother's memory. Kira turned back to the photograph, studying Evan's face as if seeing it for the first time. "What do you think?" she asked softly. "Should I stay?" The photograph did not answer. But somewhere in the depths of her heart, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the rising sun. She reached up and touched the dog tags hanging beneath her shirt. For 2 years, they had been a reminder of everything she had lost. Now, they felt like something else. Permission to move forward. "She is one of us," Holloway had said. And for the first time since Evan's death, Kira allowed herself to believe it might be true. She took one last look at her brother's face, then turned and walked toward the operations center where her new team was waiting. If you connected with this story, drop a comment and share what moment resonated most with you. Or tell us about someone in your life who carried a mission of their own, someone who refused to give up no matter how long the road became. Your stories matter just as much as the ones we tell here. The valley stretched out behind her, silent and scarred and forever changed by what had happened within its borders. But Kira did not look back. She had spent 2 years looking back. It was time to start looking forward.